advent of rollback of the state. In other words, you are talking about what? New right philosophy. You are talking about public choice approach. You are talking about NPM. Since the 1980s has been altering the role of POBAD, but not diminishing its central place in the human society. To a large extent, by now we have already, so the question is about what? New right philosophy, public choice approach, NPM broadly. Of course, it is altering the role of the state, but what is it not doing? It is not diminishing, because again Dwight Waldo has kept on telling, the core role will never change. State will always remain the linking pin, even in the network governance era, whatever you tell. You can also bring in network governance approach, you can also bring in good governance approach, then you can tell neo-Weberian state, this, that, everything. Fine. How should the structure be? Of course, because you can't write each and every answer, it will take a lot of time. I will tell you the structure, please keep copying the structure part. In intro, how you have to write? The advent of the concept of rollback of the state. Okay. So what you can tell is, in 1970s and 80s, because they are telling 1980s, you can tell 1980s itself. In 1980s, what was criticized? The big state was criticized. In 1980s, big state was criticized as what? Nanny state. Big state was criticized as nanny state. Nanny means what? Why are you catering for each and every need of humans? Big state was criticized as nanny state. You have to use these names. Jürgen Habermas called it as what? Criticized this as crisis of the legitimacy of state. Jürgen Habermas criticized it as crisis of legitimacy of state. Criticized it as the crisis of legitimacy of state. Frank O'Connor criticized it as fiscal crisis of the state. O'Connor criticized it as fiscal crisis of state. Criticized it as fiscal crisis of the state. Fiscal crisis of the state. Fine. So in this context, what happened? In this context, what all ideas evolved? The ideas of new right philosophy, public choice approach, NPM evolved in 1980s. NRP, PCA, NPM approached or evolved in 1980s in developed countries, 1990s in developing countries. 1990s in developing countries. Fine. Andrew Gabler calls it as what? Andrew Gabler calls it as small but strong state. Small but strong state. Fine. Now this is the context. This of course you have to keep, you can even start with link with Wilson also, all those things you can do, but this is the context. Now you have to address which aspect? Altered the role of the state. Fine. That is a context. You can use it as a separate subheading or linking sentence, but highlight that to the evaluator. Fine. These ideas or these, what you can say, approaches have altered the role of POBAD, public administration. It has altered the role of public administration. Fine. How is it altered? So just keep writing the core ones that you explain in your answer. So how is it altered? So what is it today? So what is the idea of today? Today it is steering rather than rowing. Steering rather than rowing. It is steering rather than rowing. Fine. Then So what is it today? Today's state is a facilitator, catalyst. State is a facilitator and catalyst rather than provider. Rather than provider. Provider of good. So you don't have to provide everything. You are a facilitator, you are a catalyst. Fine, that is one other idea. So then again, what all can you add? You can add big state has become small state. Big state becomes small state. Fine. If you want in bracket, you can write, in India it is called as what? Minimum government, maximum governance. Minimum government, maximum governance. Minimum government, maximum governance. Fine. Then next one. Introduction of market principles. Introduction of market principles into state, into public administration. Introduction of market principles into public administration. Introduction of market principles into public administration. Like what? If you want in bracket, you write concept of what? User fees, contracts, MOUs, disinvestments, etc. Outsourcing, so many are there. Those aspects. That is also another way of altering. Fine. Then, as I keep telling always, you can link to this. Network governance has led to state becoming a linking pin. Network governance led to state becoming a linking pin rather than what? Rather than monopoly of the state. Always use this diagram for it. State, private sector, civil society. That was earlier. Now it is state, private sector, civil society. Now look at it. That itself shows. Earlier imagine how much state used to play. Private sector, civil society. Now what is it? Equal. So just illustration itself will tell everything. So this ones you explain with few sentences, few examples, something like that. This is how it has kept on altering the role of the state. Understood? You can also tell today what is focused more. Today decentralization, globalization is encouraged. Decentralization, globalization is encouraged, not just globalization, global plus local is encouraged. Nicholas Henry calls it as flattening. Nicholas Henry calls it as flattening. Flatten means what? The hierarchy has reduced. Flattening. Blurring means the difference between private sector, public administration. Flattening, blurring, withering means whatever so many activities that government used to do is all given to private sector now. Withering and redefinition of the role of the state. Nicholas Henry calls it as government is networked and institutionalized, what he tells. Flattening, blurring, withering and redefinition of the role of the state. Fine, this is that aspect. Which aspect? Clear? Now, next sub aspect is what? However, clarify that. However, the central place of public administration in human society, that part you have to highlight so that evaluator gets to know. However, the central role of public administration in human society has not been compromised. has not been. Use the same word if you want, diminished. Central role of administration, public administration in human society has not been diminished. Has not been diminished. Fine. How do you say that? Below clarify. Even in network governance model, who is the linking pin? State is the linking pin. They will get the work done from others. Even in network governance model, state is the linking pin. Network governance model, state is the linking pin. It gets the work done from others. That's what is state is a linking pin. Yesterday, 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock class. 145, 150 state is a linking pin. Then neo-Weberian state, NWS, neo-Weberian state led to what? Neo-Weberian state led to what do you call this? Citizen orientation in traditional state. Citizen orientation in traditional state. NPS, service orientation. NPS led to service orientation. You know that all again you have written separately questions. I will not again go back to that. That point you need to bring 2-3 points you have to write here when you write about NPS. I am telling you structure wise here because we have already done the topic. Then below again, what you can tell which ideas? Let's say for example this good governance, everything is done. During COVID times, state played the crucial role. During COVID times, state played crucial role. Fine. Then to address climate change, inequality, state should continue its greater role. State should continue its greater role. Fine. Then always, whenever you write this question, end with Dwight Waldo's conclusion. What does he keep telling? That the role of the state may change. What is always the core? The role of the state may change, but it will never be diminished. Public interest will always remain the core. What will keep changing? Periphery. That always copy paste the conclusion, whenever the role question is about role of PABAD. Fine. So just write that conclusion with that Dwight Waldo statement.